Tsubaki sat on the floor with knees bent, sighing out her feelings of tension and despair. Her brother had been kidnapped for 2 days now, but to Tsubaki it had already felt like an eternity. She's taking time off of school by pretending to be sick. Even though lying hurts like a knife in her heart, she can't tell the school the truth.
おお、休んだらどうだ。丸2日寝てないだろう。
Her father spoke, a haggard expression adorning his features.
私よりお母さんは大丈夫？
Her mother isn't feeling well. When she heard of the kidnapping 2 nights ago, she fainted on the spot. 3 of her siblings are sleeping in another room. When they learned Hiroaki's absence, they screamed and cried. Even though they've been told that Hiroaki is at their grandmother's house, the kids are sharp. They've probably noticed the gravity of the situation through the heavy atmosphere. This family used to be cheerful, always full of smiles. The mother, physically weak, but good at cooking. The children, always arguing about this or that. The father, stubborn on the outside, but fond of doting on his daughter. Why did this have to happen? The sighing won't stop. This misfortune is just cruel. Why did the kidnapper pick us? And why Hiroaki? What could be happening to him right now as I sit here? If I could, I would take his place. Even so, Tsubaki has already decided not to show weakness before either her family or the culprit. Right now, the ones in the most pain are her father, who had to give up his prized land, and her mother, who had the child that she carried for 9 months taken away.
来た。
The sound of a cell phone mingled with Haru's low voice as it echoed around the narrow family room. What's the culprit trying to achieve, calling Haru's phone? Tsubaki watched Haru. She brought the cell up to her ear in a calm fashion. Her expression was dignified. She was no longer the Usami Haru Tsubaki had met at school, her timid back hunched over like a willow branch.
魔王だな。
Haru suddenly spoke. What does Maou mean? Not even an iota of humor accompanied Haru's absurd question. Tsubaki, on the other hand, was completely confused.
ご挨拶だな。何を企んでいる？
What are they talking about? Tsubaki's mind is immersed in chaos. This interaction makes it sound like Haru and the kidnapper know each other.
わかった。椿に変わる。
Having her name suddenly called almost made Tsubaki jump out of her skin.
私？変われと言っている。以後その携帯は椿のものらしい。
Haru handed over the phone after finishing this sentence. Tsubaki gulped. She took the phone, still on the line. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She has to speak with the kidnapper once again. Closing her eyes, she pulled the phone up to her ear.
もしもし。椿です。
調子はどうだ？
The voice was different. This wasn't a robotic voice like before, but the unadulterated voice of a man.
何のつもりですか？
警察に連絡しないでいてくれてとても感謝している。椿とは紳士的な取引ができそうだ。
It was a strange feeling, the kidnapper addressing her by her first name.
身代金は用意しました。次は何をすればいいんですか？
いいぞ。私の言うことをきちんと守っていれば、弟は必ず返す。
Maou then gave her his next instructions.
まず、その携帯電話の充電が切れないよう注意しろ。電気屋かコンビニエンスストアなどで即席の充電器を用意しろ。ちゃんと型が合うものを購入するんだ。
Tsubaki quickly opened her diary and wrote down the directions.
セントラル街に大和屋という大きなデパートがあるのは知っているか？
Facing a sudden question, Tsubaki sank into confusion.
わかると思います。
デパートの3階にカバンを売っている店がある。
はい。
明日の午前中、そこで一番安いアタッシュケースを買え。1万円もあれば買えるはずだ。
ケース。
She wrote furiously, not having even a second to question the kidnapper.
無事に購入できたら50枚の株券を封筒に詰め、ケースの中に入れて私に連絡をしろ。電話番号は今椿が手にしている携帯に入っている。
After writing everything down thoroughly, Tsubaki finally got a chance to take a breath. Tsubaki thought to herself, why does he want me to do all these roundabout things? I didn't call the police and I'll give him the ransom just like he wants. So please, just return my brother. The thoughts in her heart slipped out.
お金払いますから。ちゃんと払いますから。ですから。
The kidnapper interrupted her.
弟はちゃんと返す。
はい。
ただ、私は取引に万全を期したいだけだ。明日になってお前がいきなり警察に連絡しないという保証があるのか？
しないです。
She instinctively yelled a response.
どうして信じてくれないんですか？
逆に聞きたいのだが、どうして信じることができるんだ？
しないものはしないからです。
Laughter came from the other end of the line.
なあ、椿よ。
A voice almost like a whisper swirled around her ears.
お前は面白いな。
何がですか？
お前が無条件で他人を信じるのは勝手だが、それを私にも押し付けないでもらおうか。
言っている意味がよくわかりません。
大したものだ。私はお前のような人間は好きだぞ。
Tsubaki was speechless. Not a single word would come out. The culprit spoke again to the befuddled Tsubaki.
父親にするか決めかねていたが、やはり受け渡しには椿を指名するとしよう。
The exchange. That means the role of bringing out the ransom tomorrow has fallen onto Tsubaki's shoulders.
では明日、お前に会えるのを楽しみにしている。
Just when she was about to tell him to wait, she was greeted with the steady tone of a dropped call. Extreme fatigue attacked her. Haru looked at Tsubaki's face with probing eyes.
大丈夫か？平気だよ、おはるちゃん。犯人はなんて？
Tsubaki flipped through her diary and repeated everything to Haru. Haru silently listened to Tsubaki's doddering explanation.
携帯の充電器はあるぞ。
Haru passed it over as she spoke.
この携帯電話はもともと犯人からもらったものなんだ。ずっと持ってたの？私にとって唯一の証拠品だからな。いつかかってきてもいいように充電は絶やさないようにしておいた。そして魔王もそういった私の行動を読んでいた。
Tsubaki tilted her head and asked a question.
魔王？そう、魔王だ。魔王っていう人が犯人なの？ああ。
Haru nodded.
知り合いなの？
Haru hesitated for a moment at Tsubaki's question.
知り合いというわけではないが、椿は声に聞き覚えがなかったか？え？声？犯人の声だ。
Tsubaki reflected one more time. The kidnapper's baritone was full of allure, full of confidence.
いや、わかんないな。どこかで聞いたことがないか？そう言われても。
She rarely hears the voices of men. The only impressionable one belongs to Asai Kyosuke. When Kyosuke talks on the phone, he sometimes uses an oppressively cold tone, a tone which frightens her into a cold sweat. Almost unable to stop herself from saying Kyosuke's name, Tsubaki started to panic. Asai-kun can't be the kidnapper. A wave of embarrassment suddenly assailed her. If Kyosuke hadn't helped, her family might not even have the ransom right now. And he even talked to them about the land. Kyosuke might come off like a lazy playboy, but he's actually a gentle, reliable person. As that thought sprang to Tsubaki's mind, it was accompanied by an image of Kyosuke's face as he's passionately going off about classical music. A fire burned in her chest.
まあいい。ところで、明日は私も協力させてもらいたいんだが。
Tsubaki, trapped in a dream, was suddenly pulled back to reality.
犯人を捕まえる。
Haru stated her resolution. How's she gonna do that? Tsubaki's father, who had been silent up until now, took that as a cue to speak.
捕まえるって。
The man stood up with great effort.
それはお金を渡さないっていうことかい？
極力渡したくはありません。
Hearing this, Tsubaki became flustered.
ダメだよ。ちゃんと渡さないとヒロアキが。
The kidnapper promised. If they follow his orders, he'll release Hiroaki. Just as Tsubaki was going to question Haru, her father held out a hand to stop her.
椿、ちょっと落ち着きなさい。
だって。
Haru lowered her head slightly.
驚かせてすまない、椿。私こそ取り乱して。
Haru gave Tsubaki a reassuring smile.
宇佐美さんと言ったね。
春でいいですよ、お父さん。
捕まえるって君がかい？
ええ。お金もひろあきくんも帰ってくる。それが最高の形だと思っています。
確かに犯人さえ捕まえれば全てうまくいくよ。けれど僕らは警察すら頼らないことに決めたんだ。
犯人の言いなりになるということですね。
Haru looked as though she disapproved of the thought.
確かに犯人は大した人物です。幼児を誘拐し紙を送りつけてくるという残虐性と、身代金を株券で要求するという奇想天外な発想の持ち主です。
What is Haru trying to say? Tsubaki wasn't able to concern herself with the criminal's personality. In her mind, simply the act of kidnapping alone made him nothing but an object of fear.
そうだよ。そんな凶悪な犯罪者をどうやって捕まえるというんだい？
Tsubaki's father was right.
犯人がどれほど頭の回る人物だとしても、ただ一点姿を現さなければならない瞬間があります。
それは
身代金ダッシュの時です。正体不明の犯人ですが、用意した株券を椿から受け取る時には顔を見せざるを得ないはずです。
Or he could just send someone else to retrieve the ransom. Indeed, the criminal has even said that he wants to meet Tsubaki. She may actually end up coming face to face with him. Tsubaki's father shook his head.
宇佐美さん、前に君が言った通り、身代金を渡せばひろあきが帰ってくるという保証はどこにもないね。
私はむしろ身代金を渡したが最後、ひろあきくんは戻らないとまで考えています。なんで？約束が違うじゃない。
Tsubaki interrupted and Haru stared at her.
犯人にとって人質とはリスクの塊だからだ。解放した後、犯人の顔や声を覚えていて、監禁されていた場所を警察に話すかもしれない。
浅井君といい、宇佐美さんといい、椿の友達はただものじゃないな。
Her father smiled weakly. A ferocious battle is waging in his chest. If the police aren't called and the criminal's orders are followed, it would mean losing the land that he has protected up until now. This is the first time that Tsubaki has seen her father in so much pain.
正直どうしていいのかわからないんだ。今すぐにでも受話器を掴んで警察を頼りたい気持ちもある。ただそれをやると確実にひろあきは帰ってこないんじゃないかという恐怖も大きい。
お察しします。
椿は宇佐美さんの意見には反対なんだな。
Facing her father's inquiry, Tsubaki hesitated on her reply. A feeling similar to guilt began to sprout within her. Rather than her friend Haru, she chose to follow the instructions of this cruel, faceless criminal.
はるちゃん。
Haru averted her eyes.
私に人の家庭の事情に口を挟む権利なんてない。ずけずけと勝手なことばっかり言って本当にごめん。
Tsubaki felt pricks of pain probe her chest. The girl who calls herself a hero was only proposing to the others what she felt was the best course of action. Tsubaki wanted to at least take her feelings into consideration. After much agonizing deliberation, Tsubaki finally spoke up.
お父さん、ごめん。やっぱり警察は怖いよ。だって私は犯人の声を直接聞いてきたもの。本当に怖い人だと思う。警察だけは絶対にダメだと思う。
He nodded deeply.
でもはるちゃんの言うことも合っているように思う。犯人を捕まえたいとも思う。椿だからはるちゃんには自由にしてほしいな。
Tsubaki's smile was answered with Haru's.
ありがとう。魔王をやっつけるのが勇者様でしょ。
Her father also gave a satisfied smile.
明日は大丈夫か、椿。お前の身も心配だ。できるなら代わってやりたいが。
いいよお父さん。
ありがとう。
Tsubaki's father relied on her. She realized recently that as the eldest child, she's always been the family's center.
よし、じゃあ子供たちを起こしておいで。ご飯にしよう。
自分も一緒させてもらえると食費が浮いて大変嬉しいのですが。
もちろんだよ。みんなで食べよう。
すいません、厚かましくて。
The night grew deeper. Even from within the dark, wintry abyss that had been thrust upon this family, a single flower finally bloomed. The morning chill seemed a touch colder today. Alright, I've got a full day ahead of me today too. Finishing up the preparations for the day, I walked to the door only to have the cell in my chest pocket suddenly ring. Hello? It was Tsubaki.
朝早くごめんね。
Ah, it's no problem. Has something happened?
今日身代金の受け渡しがあるの。
Oh, I pretended to be surprised. That's a lot of pressure. Can you do it by yourself?
やるしかないよ。
I sensed a steeled resolution in Tsubaki's voice. I'm sorry that I can't be with you at a time like this.
浅井君にはたくさんお世話になってるよ。
Well, I still have work to do. I'll come right over after I'm finished. Yeah, after I'm finished.
ありがとう。待ってるね。
I hung up and walked out the door. Finally! I couldn't contain my amusement, a smile tugged at my lips. Let's enjoy this little game, shall we? Nine o'clock in the morning. Haru's mind was as clear as the winter sky.
よーし、椿。一丁我々の友情パワーを犯人に見せつけてやろうじゃないか。
はるちゃん、元気いいね。
お前こそ、ちゃんと身代金持ったか？
Tsubaki was holding the certificates in an envelope, cradling it like a precious child. After waving to Tsubaki's parents, who had walked the pair to the door, the two of them left for Central Boulevard. Where did all these people come from? Even at noon on Central Boulevard, this monstrous crowd is out of the ordinary.
ねえ、はるちゃん。
なんだ？
私たちって一緒に行動していいのかな？
Tsubaki's stride was getting heavier by the second. Haru matched her footsteps, moving in tandem.
ダメだとは言われていない。
In fact, Haru was under the impression that Maou was practically inviting her to participate in this incident.
ただ、私は離れて行動した方がいいとも思う。
Maou had likely anticipated Haru's involvement. If so, then instead of delivering the ransom with Tsubaki, it would be better to try to hide and pounce on Maou at the opportune moment. For example, the best chance of nabbing Maou might come when his attention is focused on Tsubaki during the exchange.
どうするの？
Tsubaki asked. She must still be worried about going alone.
大丈夫だ。そばにいる。
そう？
ただし、少し距離を置いて、椿を遠目に見守るような形を取らせてもらう。
Tsubaki tilted her head dubiously.
じゃあ、これから私たちはお互いに連絡を取り合えないの？
そうなる。
そっか。
Haru put her hand on Tsubaki's shoulder.
窮地に陥っているようなら、颯爽と助けに行く。
That one sentence made Tsubaki relax, if only a little bit. A hint of crimson flashed across her face, and she nodded.
最後に、一つだけ聞いておく。
何でも言って。
私は極力犯人を捕まえようとする。だが、万が一取り逃がしてしまった場合、身代金だけは奪われないように動くつもりだ。
そうなの？
Tsubaki frowned again, apprehensive once more. Tsubaki must still want to follow the instructions of the kidnapper and give him the ransom.
いいか、椿。たとえ犯人に逃げられても、身代金さえ手元にあれば、もう一度交渉のチャンスはつかめる。と思う。
Maou will try to contact the family again in an attempt to get the ransom, and after that a second battle will ensue. This should be true, but a foreboding feeling wriggled about in Haru's gut. One can claim that Haru's speculations are appropriate, but they make the critical assumption that Mao's goal is to get the ransom. To the best of her knowledge, though, this crime wasn't committed by a person who needs money. Just how much is 50 million yen in shares to Maou? Still, Haru remained stubbornly convinced that Maou was just trying to provoke her. In Mao's eyes, it might be less of a challenge and more of a game. Whatever the case, if Maou intends to defeat Haru, she would simply have to beat him to the punch. Of course, there's a chance that Maou might kill Hiroaki-kun out of retaliation when he realizes his defeat. Haru couldn't tear this unsettling thought from her mind.
はるちゃん、昨日も言ったけど、はるちゃんのいいようにして。
ありがとう。そう言ってくれると思っていた。
Tsubaki stuck out her tongue.
はるちゃんって不思議な人だね。
なんだ急に。
ドヨーンとしたり、キリッとしたり、一体どれが本当のはるちゃんなの？
そう。
To be looked into by another gave Haru a tingling feeling.
はるちゃんって転校多かったんじゃない？
まあ。
そっか、大変だったね。
As kind as she was, Tsubaki must have realized that Haru probably didn't have many friends.
おい、椿。私はよく気持ちが悪いと言われる。
Her words, seeming to come out of nowhere, shocked Tsubaki wide-eyed.
気持ちが悪かったら、縁を切ってもらって構わないんだぞ。
Haru thought of the past where she perpetually hid her loneliness behind a lone wolf attitude and a cynical facade. However, Tsubaki's response was firm.
悲しいこと言わないで。
Surprised, Haru looked at Tsubaki.
お友達だよ、はるちゃんは。
Just why would such a pure girl exist in real life? The thing is, this isn't real life, this is a visual novel. Tsubaki's gaze was firm, charismatic even. Haru decided in the back of her mind to do everything in her power for Tsubaki, no matter what happened. She couldn't understand the reason behind it, and Haru's confusion showed on her face.
最後に一つだけ聞きたい。
さっきも最後にって言ってなかったっけ？
これが本当に最後だ。そしてかなり重要なことだ。
Haru fixed her gaze on Tsubaki.
椿は浅井さんのことが好きなのか？
Tsubaki obviously hadn't expected that, as she blushed red.
どうなんだ？どうなんだと聞いているんだ。
好きだよ。もちろん、あんなに頼りになる人いないよ。ふーんって。
So her first impression was correct. Haru's emotions grew complicated. On the contrary, Tsubaki's mind seemed to have already cleared up.
何にしても、ありがとう、はるちゃん。
Tsubaki said.
ひろあきが帰ってきたら、いっぱいお話ししようね。
Haru nodded. This time it was Tsubaki's words that helped Haru relax. After all, she had just gained an excellent friend.